on all the cooking, the laundry, and all the cleaning duties. For the entire time she was with us, she did everything, and she just let me take care of Andrew. When the 2 weeks were almost over, I asked if she could stay another week, but in true Evelyn fashion, she said she'd only blocked off 2 weeks in her schedule. For my next child, I was lucky to get in her appointment book for a full 3 weeks, but not 4. And for me, it is with sadness that I'm here, but it's not with grief, because my mother lived a wonderful, wonderful life.
Good morning. Thank you all for joining us today to celebrate our mom, Evelyn, also known as Bubbie. She had an amazing life of 96 years. Paul, Jessica, and I were blessed to spend the last few months with her in our home in Long Beach, California. Mom was a woman ahead of her time. She was always seeking out new adventures. Her cousins described her as spirited, courageous, and full of gumption. I like to summarize the Evelyn Mom brand as one of learner, teacher, adventurer, with utmost love of family. Mom was determined to give all of us a life doing the things she always wanted to do, but also for each of us to have more opportunities in life. She wanted each of us to be the person we wanted to be and not the person she thought we should be. And based on her encouragement, I think we each came into our own. I was a very quiet, goody-goody youngster. That is until I moved out of the house and went away to college. My first summer home, Mom said, "Mariana, you have blossomed into a lovely young woman." And in case you didn't know, my name is Marianne, but Mom said my real name is Mariana, and they made a mistake on my birth certificate. That is our mom, very opinionated, yet very, very smart. She read up on world events every day. It's just that she only had her one source of truth. I learned so much from my mom: to get a good education, take a study abroad, which I did in Lugano, Switzerland. She also knew how much I liked fashion, and when I was in 3rd grade, she entered me into a fashion show where I had to model. She made me so proud as she took me shopping for my outfit. She also taught me how to shop for sale. In fact, I do not know if my mom ever paid regular price for her clothes. Mom shared these words of wisdom with me last week. She said, "I want the world to be clear and good for everyone." And most of all, my biggest pleasure was to give back to her. We traveled to many exotic places, traveled first class, ate at many famous restaurants, and did many things that she always dreamed of. She made me as proud to be her daughter as she was proud of me as her daughter. A small poem: "Those we love don't go away. They walk beside us every day. Unseen, unheard, but always near, still loved, still missed, and forever dear." I love you, Mom, always.
I want to thank everybody for being here, and the amazing thing, I was looking around, is everybody here knew my mom, Bubbie,
Yeah.
which is wonderful. She lived here for 28 years and was part of every life cycle event, every holiday, every non-holiday, and so you guys really all got to know her, and you know her well. I'm sure you all have stories like we have to tell. I always think of my parents and my dad. I think of him a lot now since my mom's died, as real New York intellectuals. They grew up very, very poor in New York City, but New York informed them and gave them the freedom to go to the theater and go to the symphony and go to art museums and to read. And libraries were so important to that. And that's really become a very important part of, I think, all my siblings as well. My mother was obsessed with lessons. We all grew up getting lessons. So I'm going to give you the lessons that I got from her. And they would pay for these lessons because she wanted to impart on us the things that she didn't have as a child and things that she later embraced for herself. So in my lifetime, I took tennis lessons, piano, guitar, hula, sewing. She always told me how important it was to learn to sew darts. A very important part of my life. Horseback riding, and Marianne reminded me, my mother took horseback riding in Central Park. It was very cheap then. And when we lived in Dallas, which was of course Texas, she would drive an hour to give us English riding lessons because we should learn to ride
English.
She gave us Hebrew, ballroom dancing, theater, swimming, skiing, ice skating, and of course probably the most important one for me was art. I took art lessons a lot. I remember getting on the bus every Saturday morning when we lived in Honolulu, and I would take the bus to the Honolulu Academy of Art, and I would take my art lessons and wander around the museum. And obviously that became a very big part of my life. After my father died and my mom moved to DC, she became very passionate and started to embrace, she had done them before, but she started to do so many things too. She always used to say, which would crack us up, I work at the White House. She volunteered in the mailroom, but she was so proud to always say, I work in the White House. She has a beautiful picture, I have to find it, of her and Bill Clinton, and how much she loved that, because he would come down to the mailroom. This is all pre-9/11, so you can do a lot of things. She got us a special VIP tour of the White House. And I was thinking, Lisa, you got us the Easter egg roll at that White House. How wonderful that was. She ran the library in her building, and she just traveled the world, as you can hear, and she took classes her whole life. David reminded me today, too, she must have taken more because she had gone down to 3 days a week only, and she would tell us about all the courses she took, and that was such a big part of her life. Anyway, the last thing I wanted to just mention was my parents weren't particularly religious, but they were real cultural Jews, and they really gave me a love of that, and a love of Zionism, but a real love of the culture of Judaism, and I really appreciate that from both of them as well. Thank you.
I find it ironic that my dad is under all this dirt. My mother would be smiling. So I have notes like my sister. So I'd like to make three major observations about my inspiring and remarkable mother. As my sisters have said, she gave us this gift of adventure and exploration. And I think I should begin by sharing with you that because of my father's career, listen to all the places that they lived. So when I was 2, we moved to Tripoli, Libya. We moved to North Africa. Then we moved to Wiesbaden, Germany. Then we moved to New York City. Then we moved to New Jersey. Then we moved to Dallas, Texas. Then Honolulu, Hawaii. Then back to Munich, Germany. Then to Louisville, Kentucky. Back to Hawaii. Then to Dallas. And when my father passed, to Washington, D.C. And the reason I share that with you, she once made an observation that in her early life, when they moved as frequently as they did, there was breakage. And she mourned the loss of a dish or a plate or something that was valuable. But as the years went on, she said, you know, I could care less about these things. What was more important was people. And that was a great observation that she made. And so she was always giving to others. My sister Ada Rose is the prime example of that. Oh, you like this? You can have it. I want you to have it. And Hannah last night even said, my daughter was looking at her ring and she said, I want you to have it. So, you know, my mother was right that things are not important. Cars or houses, it's human beings, it's people that make a difference. And that's why I think a lot of you are here today, because of that very, you know, life is very ephemeral. And so when breakage happens, don't worry about it. It's the people that count. And that, I think that's a great gift that she gave all of us. I would also say that my mother was born in the wrong period. Here is a woman, as Marianne said, who was bright and intellectual, and Ada Rose and others. And I think in many ways, all 4 of us, but especially my sisters, she drove them. She did not get the opportunities. Matter of fact, my grandfather, I got to see when I was in college every Sunday. He had moved to Los Angeles. He had gone blind and was in my uncle's care. And he once shared with me how proud he was that my mother had graduated from college and had gotten her master's at Hunter in Brooklyn. But the truth of the matter is, my mom will tell you, he was an Orthodox Jew, and his feeling was women don't go to college. They're going to get married, they're going to get pregnant. What a waste of money. So I told my mother this, and she was irate. And she said, when you go see Grandpa on Sunday, you let him know that I accomplished what I did. Well, I never told him. That wasn't something that you did. But my mother, she was fierce, and I think many of you know that. And so my sisters have lived extraordinary lives, because I think in essence my mother implanted in them this drive that she never had the opportunity. She was an intellectual. At moments she was absolutely brilliant. And of course, as Ada Rose points out, we went to museums, we went to concerts, to the opera, which I didn't particularly care for at one time.
Me too.
My dad and I loved sports, and my mother tolerated that. And Ada Rose is right. There was this sense of Yiddishkeit that we always had in the family. She grew up in a very Orthodox family, and she knew the things that were denied women, and she was not going to let that happen to her daughters or to people around her. When I was going off to college, this was her motto. She says, I don't care what you do in life, just be the best at it. Now that wasn't always true. I chose a professional career that she was upset about, because I was supposed to do something else. And I said, Mom, you've implanted in all your children that we should be who we are, and I'm going in this direction, leave me alone. And after that, she did. She was also a woman of tremendous self-sacrifice, the things that she gave up. We were talking the other night. We all remember, I had to call her every Sunday, and if I missed it on Monday, she let me have holy hell, I can tell you. But she said, you know, Eric, I went to Neiman Marcus and I bought something at full price, and I was startled. My mother never bought anything at full price. It wasn't part of her makeup. Even if they had the money eventually, she just couldn't do it because of her upbringing. So she sacrificed a lot for us. And Ada Rose was talking about art. When I was 10, my mother wanted me to have sculpting lessons. We were living in Wiesbaden, Germany. And I didn't really want to do it. So she said, we're going to do it together. And I found it ironic that last night my daughter, when we were over in her apartment, took 2 busts. One that I had done at 10, which is not very good, and then my mother's, which is in blue. It's actually of Ada Rose. And so we did that together. And so I won't even go into all the lessons that I had.
I know.
But the truth of the matter is that was important to her. And so she was a sculptress. She was a painter. Some of us have her paintings. They're not very good. It doesn't matter. They're Bubbie's paintings. My son has quite a few of them. And she wasn't a cook. My mother was a chef. And my 3 sisters are amazing chefs. They're not cooks. I'm not even a cook. I attempt to do what I can. Though I'm a visual learner, and my mother taught me. She said, when you're going off to college, you need to do certain things, and she taught me. So this is a very creative woman. And one of the stories that I should tell is, we were having dinner one night, and Ada Rose walks in, and she says, oh no, Mom, not another gourmet meal. And that was my mother. And then my dad would always say, and you know, this meal would be $12 a person in a restaurant. And so that's a famous classic story. But she was a social worker, and she was working in Harlem, and my dad, they were engaged, and he followed her, and he was very worried, and so he asked her to give up social work to become an educator. And so she became a teacher. And it always surprised me, knowing who she was, that she was willing to do that. She eventually became the principal of Temple Emmanuel. And so this was a woman that loved the sense of adventure, exploration, and was very creative. And the last thing I would share about her is her concept of service. So, yes, she volunteered at the White House. She didn't have to do that. She did mailroom, she did juvenile correspondence. But when I was 10, We were living in Germany. She wanted me to be in the Scouts, and they couldn't find a Scoutmaster. So guess who became my Scoutmaster? My mother. She would do things for the PTA. She did Sunday school. If someone needed an Oneg Shabbat and they couldn't find anybody, my mother loved to bake. She did it. And in her building, as Anna Rose points out, no one was taking care of the library, so she became the librarian. So she would agree with the Talmud that said, to whom much is given, much is expected. And that was our mother. Now, I would be remiss if I didn't say that she was very demanding. She was in your business all the time. And I say, Mom, quit. And so with me, she did. I don't know with my sisters if she did or not. And so in the end, what I'd like to share is that she left a legacy in her children, and I hope her grandchildren, and eventually her great-grandchildren. And as T.S. Eliot says in the Four Quartets, that old men and women should be explorers. My mother, to the very end, was exploring, traveling. She was an adventurer. And that was really important to her and important to us. She believed in a life of service, which we all strongly believe in. And this was a very creative woman. And I look at my siblings, and they are very creative people. And that was a great gift that my mother gave us all. So thank you for coming.